Chat with Friends, the Tuesday show. Great to have the gang all here together for the first time in a couple of weeks. We've all been out doing our things. I'm EJ the Collector. I'm here joined every week, as always, by a man who claims Dom equals ratings. He's not wrong. TG, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, I don't think it's a claim. I think it's a fact.
It is definitely a fact. We are also joined by Kelsey B, who has a fantastic background. Where are you, Kelsey B?
I'm currently in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah.
Awesome. Looking good. I hope everyone's had a good couple of weeks. My family took some vacations. Hope your family took some vacations. Hope everyone's doing well. But now we're back. We're going to talk some WWE today. TG, I'm going to open with this though. We talked about in the pre-show. You got a new haircut, and I'm going to be honest with you. You're looking a little ring generalish right now. You got a little Gunther thing going. I could see you as a fourth member of the Imperium. What say you?
Well, I'm going to take that as a high compliment. I will say my haircut is only new in the sense that it is recent, but it is not. This is the same haircut I've been going with for something like 20 years. So,
Kelsey, am I lying? Do you see a little Gunther in there right there?
After you said that, I can see a little of that happening there.
Mm-hmm. I think you would do just well carrying Gunther's jacket to the ring.
I can't do it the same justice that Ludwig Kaiser does. He is. I can't imagine someone being better at that than he is.
They are fantastic. Is Maxine Dupree gonna join Imperium? Is that what they're setting up here? I know we're getting right into this subject matter, but I've enjoyed this sort of feud that Gunther's in right now with Chad Gable. Well deserved for Chad Gable. Him and Otis do a great job. They are kind of a comedy tag team, but both have been. I'd take Gable seriously as a competitor, except he's being fed to Gunther. Gunther is definitely going to be breaking the Honky Tonk Man's Intercontinental title reign in a couple of weeks. You sometimes hate to see it at the expense of someone like Gable, who's such a good egg, but this is sort of the spot Gable and a lot of people find themselves in, and it was a spot that we're going to talk about Cody Rhodes and the documentary a lot today, but this is the Stardust character. Like Gable's reached a point where he's great on TV, but he's not, you can't see Gable in a main event program, but good that he's getting these sort of runs right now, right?
I would argue that Shorty G was closer to Stardust than what he's doing now, because at least he's getting a little bit of a push and under his own name. Obviously, I think you're right. He's going to be fed to Gunther, but that's okay. I mean, at this point, it's definitely a step up. I am curious about what they're doing with Maxine. I don't really know yet where this is going to go. I do think there's a scenario where she turns on Alpha Academy and joins Imperium. I think there's also a scenario where maybe they're thinking about splitting Imperium up. They've been kind of teasing a little bit of that dissension in the ranks, but I don't think they want to do it too. I mean, how many different group dissension angles can they do at once? I mean, there's already a couple.
Right. Kelsey, would Maxine Dupree do better sticking as the manager / protege of Alpha Academy, or should she go to the dark side and become Gunther's valet, his baroness, whatever it is? I don't know.
I think she, her character is great with Alpha Academy. I'd be curious to see what she would do, let loose from that.
Agreed.
See what else she would bring.
Agreed. We'll hit a couple of topics before we get into our main discussion, which is about the Cody doc. If you haven't seen it, the Cody documentary was released a couple weeks ago. It's on Peacock right now. But a couple of quick hits. Breaking news, as we were kind of going to the top of the show that I just saw on X, formerly known as Twitter, is that at midnight tonight, the talent known as Lacey Evans. I almost forgot her name. Lacey Evans' contract runs out at 12, and she's not going to be renewing it. She's already changed all of her social handles to formerly known as Lacey Evans. So it appears the reign of Lacey Evans is done with WWE. TG, what are you going to remember most about Lacey Evans' career in World Wrestling Entertainment?
I think just how many different times they tried to repackage her, and it seemed the thing that was so strange was that they would do builds for her, obviously to be presented, for example, as a face, and then she came back and she was a heel, which made no sense. Like when she was doing the best thing she ever did was a series of vignettes where she told her personal story in sort of a compelling and sympathetic way. And then very quickly after she re-debuted, she was a bad guy again.
That was like after. Was this after her maternity leave? I think when she came back, they started recapping her that
That's
way.
correct. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right. She was also technically in storyline was carrying Ric Flair's child until she was carrying an actual child, and they were like, "Oh, we gotta."
Kelsey, do you remember that storyline?
I don't.
This was, Flair was on TV sort of with Charlotte, and they were trying to do a Charlotte Lacey angle, and Rick, the angle basically was that Rick fathered, that Lacey became pregnant, which is why she took time off and to leave the show, and they were dangling this angle that Ric Flair was fathering the child, and it was skeevy and gross. I don't think it really.
Well, now let's get the order of operation correct.
Please.
They did a kayfabe thing where she was pregnant with Ric Flair's kid, and then coincidentally, she was pregnant in real life, and so that's why they dropped it, because they were like, "Oh, well, now we can't. I mean, this is too weird. We're not going to do this." So
it was definitely kind of a skeevy angle. Didn't work. I don't think it derailed her career. I think that trajectory probably would have gone the player same way it sort of played itself out anyway. I think WWE, outside of a core group of talents, the women's division doesn't get its due proper. It's definitely tried to improve that and probably has to a large extent. But once you get sort of that top echelon, the second level of female wrestlers just don't get the time as the second level and third level of male wrestlers. And there's lots of talented women in WWE. And I think some of them are getting their due now. There's been attrition, but Lacey kind of wants to do her own thing. Hasn't teased another project yet. But we'll see. We wish her all the best. She entertained us for a few years, and that's all you can ask. She had a lot of fans. Here's an idea that I also saw breaking. Logan Paul, who is he signed up for a boxing match. Now, this threw me a little bit because his wrestling career seems to be on a very high trajectory. He's got a lot of commitments, but he seems to be taking pro wrestling seriously. He's been hitting the big pay-per-views. He is teasing the Ultimate Heel tag team with Dom Mysterio. TG, what's your initial reaction to what a Dom Logan tag team would do? Could any of them ever get a word in edgewise, or would they be just drowned out of the building in boos? Dom already is. Put Logan Paul with him. What do you think?
I think that it's an idea that probably looks better on paper than it would work in real life. I think with Dom's ascent to being, maybe the top heel in WWE, I think based on reaction probably is right now. That was very carefully crafted storytelling and character development. And I think that admittedly worked out way better than they could have anticipated. But I think that just throwing two guys together because they both happen to be heat magnets, I don't think that necessarily works. Like Dom has already invested all this time with being in an act, not only with Rhea, but also with the larger Judgment Day. They have a ton of story happening around them right now. And Logan Paul is sort of this guy who is intermittently there. And when he's there, he has these very high profile, but sort of one-off feuds with different people. I think it sounds fun, but I just don't think it would be sustainable as like a weekly, TV tag team.
Kelsey, Logan is set to box in October. As we previously talked about, when he signed his contract, I'm sure he baked in a lot of flexibility with that contract to accommodate all the other things he has going. I was a little surprised to see that another combat sport would be included in that flexibility. A lot can happen in training. One good thing that probably is going for this is that Logan is not relying on his WWE contract money for sustainability. That's probably a small drop in the bucket compared to his overall income earnings. But the potential for problems when you have a really interesting subject like Logan Paul, who could be a face in wrestling for the next couple of years if he wants to, putting himself out there in boxing. Have you watched a lot of Logan fights? What do you think about the machine that Logan Paul is, and how stepping away from wrestling for a few months to train for boxing is going to help or hurt his career?
I mean, he is kind of, I guess you'd say, natural athlete. He brings that ability. Stepping into boxing, it is a different, it's more of, combat sport, whether it be entertainment boxing or boxing. Bottom line, Logan Paul is an entertainer. He's that type of person, before his wrestling match, he would just change quick in the locker room, roll out, and hit the ring. He's used to being in front of people and entertaining and that type of thing. So I think venturing into boxing would hurt more so his wrestling career if that's what he would want to choose, because he's now dipping into so many different pools. Which one is it that you want? Is it, just being in front of an audience that you're looking for, or is it wrestling that you're looking for, or boxing? Either way, he's showcased talent and confidence in front of people. But I'm not so much about him going boxing or him being a tag team with Dom. I think he should just kind of do his own thing.
He has been doing his own thing and been doing great.
Yeah.
TG, if you were the counsel for WWE and you had this contract in front of Logan, and maybe continuing these random boxing matches could have been a deal breaker or not, but what would you advise WWE when going into that contract negotiations of whether or not you would allow him to do these other sports?
I would say Logan Paul is totally unique in terms of the talent because of the financial position he's in. Whereas you could certainly exert some leverage on, pick a random guy. Chad Gable, let's say Chad Gable's like, look, I have a wrestling background. I'd like to try my hand at mixed martial arts. You could say like, look, we're not comfortable with that because we see you as part of our plans as an upper mid card guy for the next couple of years. We would prefer you not do that. Maybe you could exert that, or maybe they'd be okay with it based on the promotion. Logan Paul, they have zero leverage because Logan Paul is a guy who, if you look at his, estimated net worth, it's by some estimates it's over $200 million. He makes 10 million plus a year just from like YouTube stuff.
Yep.
So whereas all these other talents, like even top level talent, even people, I mean, maybe Roman a little bit, but like even somebody like Seth Rollins, let's say, their primary source of income by far is WWE revenue streams, whether that means merchandise, their base salary, pay-per-view, bonuses, whatever. So you control, 80, 90% of their income. You can exert a lot of leverage. If you go to Logan Paul and say, like, look, man, we're not coming, you need to stop doing this other stuff. And the response is going to be, oh, you mean this other stuff that I do that makes me 10 times as much money as you pay me? Like, no, I'm not doing that. So I would just say, let him do whatever he wants, unless it's something, illegal.
Right.
Let him do whatever he wants and just live with it and just look at it as elevating your brand and increasing your visibility through him and the audience that he reaches.
I'm totally invested. I'm enjoying Logan Paul being a part of WWE. He's, as far as polarizing a figure he is, he's not really all that controversial a figure. He made some kind of dumb mistakes as a young kid starting out on YouTube that got him some bad exposure. But for the most part, like, he's not one of these guys that goes around, causes trouble, or, is kind of embroiled in controversy. Our producer, Cheats, who's on the boards, wants to come in and give a Logan Paul take. So, Cheats,
I'm ready.
I do.
Cheats, jump in. Logan Paul, talk about his leverage, talk about his opportunities, talk about his boxing. What is your Logan Paul take?
I have an absolute Logan Paul take, and I think it goes along the lines of what TG was saying. But even more so, I think WWE likes him doing this stuff, and I'll tell you why. The attraction for WWE is that Logan Paul is Logan Paul. If Logan Paul continue, this is all about the YouTube, the boxing, all of this is what makes Logan Paul, which makes him attractive and an asset to WWE. Mm-hmm. If Logan Paul, even though he's an extremely talented athlete and actually a really good wrestler, if he just became a wrestler, if he just became The Miz, or Seth Rollins or something like that, he would not be as attractive to WWE. So this part of it, the prime drinks, the YouTube going to his brother's fights, the trolling, all of this stuff is what WWE signed up for. And I don't think it's discouraged at all. I don't think they're worried about injury. I actually think it's the opposite. Go do all the crazy Logan Paul stuff you want. And if you come back and you're as good as to get in a SummerSlam match with Ricochet, we'll take it and we'll build it.
Does he need to be, when he's at these other things, when he's on his Impulsive podcast, when he's at his brother's fights, when he's doing any sort of Prime event? Prime is a priority for him, obviously. So is his podcast. Does he need to be promoting the WWE product while he's doing that? Or
Nope.
is his face alone?
His face alone. The
draws-
WWE's
Okay.
job is to promote him, and his
Okay.
job is to promote himself. This is
Gotcha.
this is what I see on it. I think this is even more unique than even say Brock Lesnar, right? When Brock Lesnar actually went and was legitimately a UFC champion. I think this is even more than that. I don't think they're worried about him and his shenanigans at all. I think they encourage it. The only thing they're going to tell him is don't cross the line per se of like something that could get him canceled or get
Right.
get us in hot water to lose our endorsements. He doesn't want that because look, he just said he makes millions upon millions on Prime, right? He doesn't want to do anything that would ever get him in trouble again in some of his controversial stuff in the past. However, his job is to go be Logan Paul a million times over. And WWE, I think, just says, hey, look, he's going to probably be a bigger draw after win or lose this boxing match than before.
I got you. Okay, well, before we get to our main topic, we're gonna go around real quick to the three of you, and she's just left, so I'll go to the two of you. In 2 years, within 2 years, are we seeing the Paul brothers in WWE, or do you think Jake's gonna steer clear of that, doesn't want that, wants something more legit, or eventually are we gonna see both Pauls competing together or against each other in a ring? Kelsey.
If the opportunity presents itself, I see them doing something like that. I mean, why not? They're already dipping into so many different things. I could see it if the opportunity presents itself.
What do you think, TJ?
I think you'll get Jake for a match, like a feud in a match. I don't think he's as enamored or invested with WWE as his brother is. So I do think you'll see a match with both of them, a tag match, but I don't think he's going to be, I don't want to say full time because he's part of the main roster, but
yeah.
I don't think he'll ever be like at that degree of involvement.
I would tend to kind of agree with that, but we'll see what the future holds for the Paul brothers in WWE. Okay, let's get into it. I watched the Cody doc for the first time last night. Kelsey, I know you, as a alumnus of the Nightmare Academy, was invited to the premiere, which you didn't make, but you have since seen it. TG, I know you have seen it. I want to get everyone's thoughts about it. TG, you gave a great kind of summary of your thoughts about it, which we're going to use sort of as an outline as we go through this. We'll just start with the fact, WWE films, they're not putting out Oscar-winning feature films. The Marine, these other movies, they haven't really made a lot of movies lately, but
I don't think they exist per se anymore.
It's they're not co-producing. Whatever kind of co-credit they have on Cena's movies, it's not a WWE Films venture anymore. And that was really, it was moderately successful. Who knows if financially successful? But I will say their documentaries over the years, and before it was on Peacock or the network, it was their DVDs they would put out. They are tremendous. They are as good as any Netflix documentary. They're expertly produced. They have just a great, I don't know who is behind the scenes in all those, but they hit it out of the park every single time. I used to get a lot of the DVDs. I've watched a lot of the ones, the features, the 24/7s they've had of wrestlers coming back from injury, leading up to Mania. This Cody doc was as good as anything I have seen them do. A fantastic story. Out of the gate, just before we get into details of it, Give me your impressions of this, and give me what you thought of the documentary, Kelsey.
Overall impression is, I mean, exactly what we're doing is telling a story. And there's so much that I didn't know, like with the background or, you know, the fight and just the whole storyline in general. So it actually, you know, I think it kind of can connect with someone in a different way, but just to hear the overall story and where it came from, and the drive from, you know, Dusty Rhodes that was given to him, and to see it all come together in, you know, a 2-hour span of time. It's just really awesome how I don't know who also produced it, but I agree they did an excellent job as far as telling Cody's story and the story.
I thought just tremendous. TG, overall thoughts before we get granular into different parts of the story.
Overall, I think it was extremely well produced, as you all have said. I think that top line about this documentary, just from sort of the, you know, 30,000-foot view, is that it's important to consider how much WWE has invested not only in Cody, but in these sorts of projects. Meaning, they are completely and utterly committed to this guy as their top babyface, which makes, you know, total sense. And he has, as we've talked about in the past, he has done something that I wasn't even sure was possible in 2023 to do in pro wrestling, which is to be a true sort of white meat babyface that is way over, the most over face they have in the entire company. So I think that the documentary, we'll get into the details, as you said, in a minute, but I think the fact that this documentary exists and is of the level of quality that it is, in and of itself, speaks to the commitment that the company has to him and is a reflection of not only where we are right now, but probably where we're going to go over the next year to 2 years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So one of the first things that jumped out when I was watching this was sometimes I forget the age gap that there is just between, say, Tom, me, and you, who are close in age. And Cody is 9 years younger than us, 10 years younger than us. And Kelsey, you're even a little bit younger than that. You and Cody are closer in age than Tom and I are to Cody. When Cody said that his first memories of his dad was his dad in the polka dots on WWF television back in, 92, 91, you know, Kelsey, you were still very, very young at that time. Cody was, kindergartner, 5, 6 years old. Dusty had a legendary career that both Tom and I were very much aware of for the 12 years before that. Now, I'm not going to speak for Tom, but Tom remembers Dusty versus Ric Flair in the NWA. Dusty and the Four Horsemen. Now, I remember Dusty early on in NWA, and this is like 1985. 85 to 90, him and Ric Flair were the two biggest stars outside of WWF. And they were on TBS on Saturday nights, and Dusty Rhodes, teaming with the Road Warriors, teaming with Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA. This is before Cody was even born. And it was just sort of shocking to me that, like, I have a full memory of Cody's dad, and a lot of people do, of Cody's dad before Cody was even born. Cody was part of Dusty's like second act, not his first act. So sometimes I just forget, that everything that happened with Dusty before 1990, which is tremendous, from Florida in the 70s to doing the whole territory circuit, biggest name on the circuit, to being the premier star in NWA in the 80s on television when I came about. Tom, are you with me on that? Like a whole career of Dusty before Cody had any idea about him.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I get what you're saying, but for me, it's like, again, I didn't really start watching wrestling until I was in college. So I was away, like I knew who Dusty Rhodes was. I had heard of him, but it wasn't like I had memories from 1980. All my memories from like 1985 and stuff are like sports related, like Red Sox stuff. And but yeah, I mean, this was a point that I made and kind of my like summary of things I took away. It was really interesting to hear them, Cody and his sister, talk about that Dusty was like the perfect father and this and that, which I'm sure he was to them, because his first go around, it's sort of a more stereotypical, he was away all the time. He and Dustin didn't really have a great relationship. And it's just funny how there's sort of these two very different, equally valid and accurate perceptions by sort of the marriage number one, marriage number two, and those kids. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And to your point, that as a result, there's kind of this big age gap between the two, like take one, take two.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, like, and I when I kind of got to that point, I understood that, especially when I read your point. I get that, like, for Dustin and Dustin's sister in Dusty's first marriage, he was away, whatever he was doing on the road, he wasn't around a lot. The money was different then. He was a big star, but he didn't seem to, he was a road guy. He was a professional wrestler, not the great family man that maybe he turned into. He was the 90s, really. Cody didn't, I mean, he had an entire career in the 90s with WCW. I mean, he was in the NWO, and this is when Cody, but he was also home a lot more. He was more local to Atlanta. So coaching Cody's football teams like that while he was on television, he was just being a different guy. And then he was fortunate enough to get sort of hired by, WWE to help run NXT later on when Cody was a performer. But, Kelsey, what are your memories? Do you have any memories of Dusty Rhodes at all, or is your sort of Rhodes family history start with Cody?
So Goldust really stood out a little more to me, in the sense of I recognized the name. So the Cody story really started with me WrestleMania last year when he showed up in Dallas. So that's when that whole story started with me. So I wasn't too familiar with Dusty's presence back then as well. I was more so introduced first to Goldust, but I didn't put that together until later on in life, after I was at Nightmare Factory. So I didn't even really put that. I just had Cody as his own. So that's how I knew of Cody, was just him on his own. I knew Dusty Rhodes was his father, of course, but when I heard Rhodes, really for me, the first thing I thought was Cody, because that's who I was introduced to.
I like it. One of Dusty's all-time famous promos was his Hard Times promo. I'm sure everyone has seen it, come back and heard it. Unknown to, I guess, a lot of people, that in the early aughts, before Cody started wrestling, after WCW had folded, and I guess before Dusty, got a job with WWE again, his family did have hard times. Dusty was not great with money, it seems like. I mean, he said it himself. There was whatever he made, he spent, and he certainly wanted to keep a certain lifestyle for his family. But he, and this was also kind of an era before the Comic Cons, where a wrestler who was a name, if he wasn't with WWE or WCW, there wasn't these weekend shows you could go to make several $1,000s. That really phenomena had not begun yet. I say that because I think it was probably 2003 or 4 or 5, my brother sent me an autographed 8x10 Dusty Rhodes autograph. And I said, where'd you get this? He's like, a week ago, Dusty Rhodes was making an appearance at a modular home site and was selling, autographs. That was his appearance at a modular home site. No advertising. He just saw this sign and rolled up to it. There was no one else at this model home, but Dusty was there with a table and 8x10s. And Andy and I, who grew up watching wrestling, that was Andy couldn't believe it, and gladly dropped the $25, whatever it was, to get a few minutes with the Dream. And I had this 8x10 autograph of Dusty Rhodes in that time where he was he had to do that to make ends meet. Just like in the documentary, we saw he was doing car ads for local Atlanta dealerships. And as Cody was saying, like, he wasn't doing that to make money. He was doing that so his car wouldn't get repoed. So tough times indeed. But it's, you know, it's definitely something I definitely cherish, is that Dusty's autograph, and that documentary gave some perspective as to why he was at a modular home sighting in Albemarle County, Virginia, you know, in 2004. A lot of one great thing I thought this made this documentary wonderful was the amount of archived Dusty footage there was.
Yes.
Just like the documentary would just kind of weave in and out of all these interviews with different stars. And if you didn't really know or weren't paying attention, I guess they had a year of when that in the corner. I didn't really notice it. You might not have realized until they announced that, until they talked about it in the show, that Dusty had passed away, because he was segmented in perfectly with everybody else. Now I get that, because in 2014, I guess, and TG, when did Gold Dust come back to the company? Do you remember? I just really forgot that he had that second run with Cody / Stardust.
So this gets a little tricky, because I think he had at least 3 different runs, because the first run, of course, was, you know, the 90s with the original Goldust character. Then he went to WCW sort of at the tail end. He came back, and that's when he was like doing stuff with Booker T and like that period.
Okay.
And then later he came back and was doing the stuff. I think that's when after he left. I can't remember when he was doing, like, when he was like getting over his like substance abuse and stuff. I think that was between WCW and when he came back and did stuff with Booker T.
Sure.
But then later is when he came back and did the stuff with Cody. So that was pre Stardust initially, and then Stardust came, and he and Stardust were a team for a while.
Yeah, so there was a period of time when all 3 Rhodeses were employed
by WWE.
Yeah. And again, when you have a family like that, you have Cody, who's an established star, you have Goldust, Dustin, who had been in the company last times. Dusty was training, mentoring wrestlers at NXT, you know, and that's when they were putting out DVDs and videos. I get why there's a lot of interview footage of them, but the fact that to get the sort of interviews that told the Cody tale so well to be able to use in 2023 was, I think, just a bonus. And I was surprised and happy to see Dusty featured. Not just, I mean, you obviously cannot talk about Cody without Dusty, and that's part of one of Cody's, you know, what a theme of that documentary was, cannot bring up Cody without Dusty now. But yeah, I thought just a great addition with the amount of Dusty footage. Anything's come out from Dusty's interviews, Tom, that grabbed you? Or
well, what I was going to say was Dusty's interviews were interesting from the standpoint of what you just talked about, which is they're showing comments of his from like 2010 or 2014, and yet they dovetail perfectly with things that Cody's talking about in 2023. But one of the most interesting aspects of the entire documentary to me, and I think was maybe one of the most real things in the whole documentary, was the fact that Cody had this, I don't want to say unfair, because obviously it was a huge plus from a career standpoint, but he's put in this position where he's like 20 or 21 and he's on the main roster where he has minimal training. His dad is really not a factor in any of that, and he sort of has this trial by fire that has all these ups and downs. And then just around the time when he's becoming pretty frustrated with WWE, his dad is taking all of these young talents under his wing and guiding them in NXT. And Cody, understandably, is, I think, justifiably a little resentful of that, frustrated by it. And he's sort of like, I'm the same age as these people, and my dad is helping them. And I am kind of trying to swim on my own at the highest level that there is. And just him kind of exploring and talking through that, I thought was really interesting, even to the point where he made the point that after his dad passed away, that the NXT talents, of course, had a emotional connection to Dusty, had referred to themselves as, Dusty's kids, and how even that was completely understandable, like a little frustrating for guys. Like, he was my real dad. Like, he was my dad, and I'm having to sort of process all these emotions, and one of them is kind of this frustration with the fact that this guidance and sort of helping hand that my father had come back to the company to offer to a generation of wrestlers was something that he himself, Cody, never had the benefit of. So I thought that was a really interesting exploration of kind of Cody's conflicted feelings about his experience in WWE at that time versus what was happening at NXT.
We're so lucky that we, have as a co-host an alumnus of Cody's Nightmare Factory school. Kelsey, you were there in early 2023, right? Part of the 9th class, correct?
Correct.
So, I've never been to wrestling school. I've never been down to Nightmare Factory. I don't think TG has either. Did you feel like you were one of Cody's kids? That's my first question. Were you a Cody's kid? Did Cody make you guys feel that way? And does the specter of Dusty sort of play into the Nightmare Factory at all, or is it sort of all on Cody?
For me, it's all on Cody. So what the documentary really did is connect the two together. I knew there's the Dusty presence, of course, but I didn't really know fully the connection. So really watching the documentary got to put those pieces together. It really got to show another side. I see why, he has a training facility, the Nightmare Factory. His father was very big on training and development. So a lot of these pieces have connected at the training camp at Nightmare Factory. Definitely more so Cody focused, but now I understand where it came from. I understand and I see where the influence came from, where the drive, it all, makes sense and comes around full circle after watching the documentary. But as far as the presence that I had there was definitely more so Coach Cody's presence.
Cody's WWE career, before he left, I think was that of a, mid to upper card status, never really main evented, pay-per-views, was involved in major world title storylines. I mean, when he was there, and help me out, TG, like from the years he was there, maybe, and even up to during the Stardust run, the world title was being passed around between guys like CM Punk, Alberto Del Rio, right? Sheamus.
Yeah.
This is before the Shield. I mean, the Shield was just sort of coming in. So I wouldn't call it lean times in WWE at all. I mean, Cena was a big star. So there was definitely bigger stars than Cody, but Cody was always in the.
I was actually a big fan of that era with WWE. I liked it creatively, what they were doing for a lot of those years. Sort of when they had the Attitude Era, and then they after they beat WCW, I felt like there was less creativity because there wasn't competition, and then I felt like there was a little bit of a resurgence after that, like sort of around, I don't know. I mean, I would have to look at kind of like what the pay-per-view main events were to really remember and match this up with years, but like 08-ish, 09 through like 2013-ish.
Yeah, because by 08, like all the invasion angles with WCW and ECW had sort of run their course.
Yeah.
And now they were just sort of they were definitely one. ECW may have still been a brand by itself, but it really was, that had been put aside. And this is sort of the emergence. It was sort of the Cena years, really.
Yeah, and what I'll tell you that really surprised me, to go back to like what Cody's kind of position or standing was during that point in his career. Of course I remembered him. I remember that he brought back the Classic Intercontinental Championship. I remember that. So I remember that he was, obviously having a successful career, but wasn't at the top of the card. But when they showed that match at WrestleMania against Rey Mysterio, in my mind, I'm like, oh, so Rey obviously beats him here. but he won, and
Yeah.
Cody won, and I was like, God, I don't remember that. I don't remember
Me
him
neither.
beating Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania, like especially during that era when Rey was, Rey was a top guy. He was in the World Championship, mix. So it was maybe even a little better than I remembered in terms of where Cody was status wise in the lead up to Stardust. So
a good portion of the documentary, kind of act 2 of the documentary was about him going through some turmoil with his standing in WWE before he left as the character Stardust. Now, Kelsey, I don't know how much you remember Stardust, but TG, you say that character actually worked.
It worked. I will defend that character all day long. I get why he was frustrated by it. I get that, but I'm like, he did great. He completely committed to it. It was weird, but also weird in like a good wrestling way. It fit pretty nicely with the existing Goldust character. For me, I get the point. He had reached a level in his career where he felt like, okay, I've been, I was the rookie, son of Dusty Rhodes. I've worked my way up. I was in Legacy, got through that, and sort of kept progressing. I was the Intercontinental Champion, all that. So the next logical step is to move into sort of the adjacent to the world title picture. And he gets Stardust, and so now he's like, Stardust is never going to be a world champion. Like that. This is, to the point we were talking about earlier, it's with guys who are comedic, rarely will they be seen as a serious contender for a world championship. Mm-hmm. And so I understand the perspective, the frustration from that perspective. But what I will say is, if you look at it from a wrestling character standpoint and an entertainment standpoint, I will defend that character all day long. The timing maybe was bad, but the character itself, he did great at it, and it worked.
Yeah, character was great because Cody was fully committed to it. I'm a fan of Legacy Cody. I thought Orton, DiBiase Jr., Rhodes, because I had familiarity with all their dads, I thought this was totally going to work. Turns out that Cody was probably still a little inexperienced. DiBiase's potential was never really fully met in a ring. Orton stands on his own, but like I thought that I liked that persona. I liked it more than dashing Cody Rhodes. When I was watching, what I can remember is when I was watching Stardust, I was feeling for Cody and actually thinking like the things that he was talking about was pretty much what I thought he would be feeling, because it's certainly what I would have been feeling given what I could observe on TV. Was this Goldust character new to you, Kelsey, and if it was, knowing what you know about Cody, can you see him just like making chicken salad out of chicken shit?
Yeah. So as far as the Stardust character, or Goldust character,
Goldust was the brother.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. The Stardust
which
character
came out of Goldust, which I guess I didn't really appreciate either. Tom, did you remember that was sort of a byproduct of Goldust was Stardust? Because I had totally forgotten that.
I mean, I think in terms of a character, they obviously wanted them to have some points of comparison between the two. But my understanding was that he was called Stardust because that was one of Dusty's nicknames back in the 80s. He used that, and so the character obviously was not.
Yeah. So go ahead, Kelsey. Sorry.
So as far as the character, it stood out to me just because of the character being who it was, like stemming from Goldust, the all gold, and it's a character that sticks out. The gear sticks out, right? So that's what was more brought to my attention back, like bringing it back to Goldust. So Stardust really was not stuck in my memory. I had to kind of dig into it a little bit and put those two together. But yeah, the Stardust character doesn't really pop into my memory.
They chronicled Cody's upbringing, his first run with WWE, And I thought they really covered well just sort of what he was going through personally and leading up to him being released. They are correct in this documentary. This is now 2016, 17, 18. It was when, I was sort of full, back investing, watching Raw, watching SmackDown. I had Twitter. So wrestling Twitter was now sort of something I was following regularly to know sort of what was going on. And there was still no AEW. So there was one show in town, and then there was this whole indie world that I was beginning to sort of learn about because I was on Twitter, I was following stuff. He was the first big time, fully established former WWE superstar who started working just like the doc said, from the bottom up. He appeared for Virginia heavyweight or Virginia Championship Wrestling. He wrestled for that Maryland promotion. He did all the other promotions you do. Were you following Cody, online, Tom, during those times, or was he just out of sight, out of mind?
I mean, for me, I'm not that aware of the indie wrestling scene. There are obviously certain names that I've heard of, and for him, because of his trajectory of being an established WWE guy for years and then going to the indies, I was at least aware of him. Like, I knew when he went to Japan and he was doing Bullet Club stuff, I was aware of that. And at one point, he was the Ring of Honor World Champion at one point, correct?
Yeah, he hit every other promotion there was.
Yeah. So I was vaguely aware of what he was doing, but I can't say that I was following it closely.
Yeah, I mean, he was going around, he was collecting these belts because he'd be the main draw for any booker, because I mean, he was affordable for an indie promoter, and he had now that's the MO of a ton of guys. No more so than Matt Cardona, who was on the documentary. And I think the reason you have Matt Cardona, I think they did that, I would think, because he had took that model. And now Matt Cardona, since he was Zack Ryder in WWE, held championship gold, a lot like Cody, had reached a plateau, was not going to be in the main event scene, sort of a comedy act, but established. Also, I mean, would you agree, TG, that Matt took that outline and has sort of tried to do what Cody did and has done it with virtually as much success?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's had as much success as Cody had, but I think that one thing that was similar with both of those guys is they were guys who they took matters into their own hands. They weren't going to just wait around for WWE to come up with a great idea or any wrestling company to come up with a great idea. They had a vision and a blueprint. I think in the case of Matt, when he was in WWE and really was not going anywhere, he started to have that. I can't remember that what was it? True
Long Island Story. His vlog.
Combination of those words.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, especially at that time frame, there weren't a lot of people who were doing that sort of thing. And in the wrestling context, he was really, I think, probably the first to do the kind of self-promotion that was really successful. And he was able to, have an impact in that regard that forced them then he started getting a response in the arena because people were aware of what he was doing. And then it sort of compelled them to, push him. And I think from Cody's standpoint, he had an even larger vision, a bigger picture vision of, I'm going to do this, not just get myself over because I'm not doing what I want on TV. I'm going to go outside of the company and sort of create my own, playing field. And he did that. I mean, would you agree? Here's a question. As talented as a lot of the people are in AEW, would you agree without Cody's involvement in building that AEW, as we know it, they don't get the TV deal initially, at least not when they get it. They don't have that same sort of impact that they had because he was basically the one who was really pushing for kind of those steps along the way that eventually got them to where they were on, Turner networks and stuff.
Kelsey, what say you?
So, I'm thinking as far as the question is what it looks like for AEW, correct?
Does AEW
Yeah.
sort of get rise as fast as it did, get the success it did out of the gate without Cody's involvement?
In other words, is he
Right.
a necessary? My premise is he is a necessary ingredient. He's not the only ingredient, but without him, that doesn't come together. Without his sort of vision and building what he built in the indie realm, that he's sort of a catalyst for that to all come together.
Right. Yes. Yep. Like the driving factor for AEW. And, this is something that I learned in that documentary. That's very fresh to me, was very fresh to me as far as that AEW connection goes. But I definitely think he would be considered a huge driver with that foundation. Curious to see, since it is still very, very new and considering maybe it's still in kind of developmental stages, to see where else, that'll be taken. I think it's just getting started as far as AEW and what it has to bring. I think there's more to it that can happen down the road with it. And we'll see that progress over time. But with Cody being, as you said, a catalyst with AEW, I really see AEW, taking off. And after watching the documentary and learning how, it even all stemmed and where it came from, I just kind of think it's a home run. I'm curious to see how it unfolds over the years, but yes, I do agree with what you said as far as being a catalyst for AEW.
Yeah, and Tom, I'll say undoubtedly yes. Now, I have a lot of strong opinions about AEW, as we know. Yeah, I mean, around that time, 2017, 18, I was starting to listen to some Conrad Thompson podcasts with Tony Schiavone, with Bruce Pritchard. JR's came later, Eric Bischoff. Conrad Thompson, helped run that Starcast podcast, wrestling podcast, got really big around 2017, 2018. And the whole indie scene, had not had sort of some big super show ever before. Yeah, that doesn't happen without Cody. Cody is the link to give. Now, again, I thought it was cool that, you can't tell this Cody story without talking about Starcast, AEW, and both on Stone Cold's podcast several months ago, they haven't shied away from discussing AEW when it's been relevant and necessary. Chris Jericho was on Stone Cold's podcast when he was an active member of the AEW roster. They are. We'll talk. I mean, we can talk about how much what they call competition, but they are two competing sports entertainment companies, both on television. Yes, Cody gives full credit to Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks. The two of them and him, along with Conrad Thompson, put that Starcast together. Could you get 10,000 people for an independent show in America? Hadn't really been done, hadn't really been thought of, because indies were small and there was one large company to work for if you wanted to become a big wrestling star, and that was WWE. Well, I don't know if anyone if someone must have underestimated, because they sold out in an hour. The Young Bucks are among the two biggest indie wrestlers in America, have been for many, many years. They are great businessmen for themselves and can book great indie shows, but 10,000 people don't fill the United Center just for the Bucks. Cody had a tremendous amount to do with that, and just knew how to put people. I think probably Cody, as much as the Bucks, knew how to set all that up. Now we talk about from Starcast, along with Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, who had also was out of WWE by then, had left, somewhat disenchanted with the business, and Hangman Adam Page, they start AEW. If the Young Bucks go to Tony and say, let's do this, Tony doesn't do it. If the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, who was a huge star in Japan, big star on the indie scenes, if the three of them go to Tony, Tony doesn't do it. I don't know where Jericho fits in on this, but like Cody gave the Bucks and Omega gravitas, gave them almost like the security, the collateral, I think, to Tony to say, this is worth doing. Not only look what, yes, I'm a Rhodes, yes, I have, but I have a career's worth of WWE to learn how this machine works. That does not, I don't think AEW starts without Cody. I don't think it gets a TV deal without Cody.
Yeah.
I don't think it has success without Cody. And quite honestly, I worry about the AEW product to this day still without Cody. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that for AEW, we've talked about this in the past as far as where AEW might be like come fall 2023. And I've made the point, and I think you would agree with this, that AEW has a chance to be in the best position it's ever been in. And I think that doing a Wembley show that's going to get 80,000 people is a big piece of that. The issue with them is, not to go off on a whole AEW tangent. By the way, a friend of mine just coincidentally took a vacation to London with his family last week, and he said there's AEW ads everywhere there.
Unreal.
So I think that the concern I would have about AEW is the same one that I've said in the past. I think that having a soft brand split really helps them. It helps alleviate the concern I have. But I think the key with them is going to be, it's a week to week kind of story building and putting on shows week to week that have a consistent through line and coherence that build to their limited number of pay-per-views that they do every year. And I think that what we have seen so far is that I think Collision has been, from a wrestling standpoint and sort of a entertainment standpoint, has been a solid addition to their TV lineup. But at a certain point, you got to have the rating numbers that are going to justify larger and larger buy-in from your television partners. And right now they've got that, but I think the buy-in, that is, but the ratings, I think, have been a concern. And again, ratings aren't the be-all end-all that they once were because of many different things. But bottom line, I think AEW has set themselves up for success, but there's got to be follow-through in Q4 of 23 and then beyond that. And I think that that's going to be a big question. To go back to one quick thing, what I have heard and read, which I think has credence behind it, but it's wrestling, so who knows, is that the big thing with Jericho being part of that at the beginning was that Tony Khan was on board with, like, when the Elite came to him and all those guys, he was on board with the idea, but Jericho was essential to getting Turner on board. That they wanted somebody who was an established top star who had been on television, a national TV show more recently than those guys had. Well, in the case of the Bucks and Kenny, they had never been on a national TV show for any period of time. But for Cody, it had been a few years since he'd been on WWE, and Jericho was a key part of getting Turner to be like, okay, we'll do this.
Yeah, I thought Cody just in his first couple of years just brought credibility to that show, that promotion out of the gate.
The thing that blows my mind, and I think Mark has talked about this in the past, is just Cody is incredibly over as a pure babyface. Mm-hmm. And the last probably at least 6 months that he was in AEW, the crowd was not, they were like, no, we do not like this. Stop. We reject you. I mean, it's just so crazy because I think all of us think of like wrestling fans as not entirely one group of people, but certainly in modern wrestling that there's not going to be this dramatic difference between a WWE crowd and an AEW crowd. But man, when it came to Cody, there absolutely was. And that's why I was a little, when he went to WWE, I'm like, I hope this works. I think he'll be good. I know he's going to be great in the ring, but I'm very curious about how crowds are going to react to him. And he has been way over since day one and has never stopped being over. So,
yeah, like, I mean, I'm sure some of that has to do with, I mean, the tribalism is definitely around right now with WWE, AEW fans. You know, a lot of it's online and nuts. But yeah, I mean, some of it was just that here's somebody who was seemingly who quit our competition to come join us. That's why we're going to embrace him and love him, because they've got, you know, WWE fans, you know, a lot of them have their thoughts about guys like the Bucks and Kenny. Like, if they're so great, why haven't they been over here, for all those reasons? So, you know, one thing he addressed but didn't really talk about specifically was the reason why he left AEW. The only thing he said was it had nothing to do with money, which I'm willing to believe that. I'm sure there was money to be had if he wanted to stay with this. And it wasn't about what he said. Did he say talent, or did he say on-screen talent? What did he say?
He said
it wasn't talent.
Roster or talent. I can't remember the word he used, but yeah, he didn't say it was. He said it was not about that.
Yeah, Kelsey.
It was a personal matter.
He said it was a personal issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
issue, yes.
you know, we don't. I mean, who knows? I mean, I
blame CM Punk.
You blame CM Punk, who wasn't with the company even then.
I think it was a falling out with the EVPs.
I think it was a falling out with EVPs. I think when he says it wasn't about talent, it wasn't about the guys in the ring. It was about guys in the office, and the Young Bucks are executives.
Yeah,
Kenny Omega is an executive. I think he had differences with the Bucks on how he wanted that show to look like. Both sides, I'm sure. I mean, Tony Khan's ears, how bent have they gotten in the last few years? He'll listen to anybody. Tony wants to be friends with everyone. That's probably part of the problem. Yeah. But I mean, he clearly had a creative vision, I think, and a difference with maybe, I don't know if it's business wise, personal wise, I mean, whatever. But clearly, you know, I think Cody and probably the Bucks had a problem. Interesting that, you know, TG, you say, we're not going to get deep into this. You say that there's one common denominator with all these AEW problems, and it's Punk. The Bucks have been a common denominator just as long as well.
Oh, I don't know about all. I wouldn't go that far.
Well,
I don't think that. I would even say the biggest problems AEW faces are not related to CM Punk.
You're probably right. But so the Bucks, you know, Bucks are great. Bucks aren't big time. Bucks never been big time. Yeah. Kenny Omega is a huge star in Japan.
Yeah.
He's not big time.
Mm-hmm.
Cody Rhodes is big time. CM Punk is big time. Yeah. Chris Jericho for a long time was big time. So, you know, if the common denominator are the Bucks are constantly trying to swing above, you know, hey, great for them to get a national promotion.
MJF and Adam Cole are big time.
100%.
I think they're big time.
1,000%.
Yeah, and. Yeah, so, it was. I laughed when the story came out recently about how Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and I guess Adam Page as well, had re-signed with AEW.
Yep,
and I'm like, I mean, I'm not going to say for Omega and Page, but like, yeah, the Bucks made a smart decision. Like, they would be. Right. I mean, maybe NXT guys.
No. The Bucks would be booking 1,100 person shows in Reseda, California, they'd be totally fine with it. But correct. But don't expect to get 10,000 people anywhere.
Right. I meant if the choice was resign with AEW or test the WWE wires, I'm like, hey, you made a smart call.
Yeah, WWE. I mean, I'm sure WWE would take their call, but like. They're not getting any. They're not.
Yeah, I think WWE would be interested. They'd be interested in Omega. They'd be interested in Hangman, Adam Page.
Probably.
Obviously, MJF.
Obviously,
there would be some other talents that they have in AEW that'd be interested in. But the Bucks, it's like, here's an amazing thing. We're an hour and 4 minutes into this show,
and
Bray Wyatt is probably weeks away from returning, and we have not mentioned him.
Well, you know, this documentary was so riveting to me that I wanted to dedicate a whole week to it. I felt if I even breathed his name, I wouldn't get yelled by Kelsey. Kelsey's with me on a Bray return 100%. I definitely feel that.
It's like the anticipation is built up, I think. Yeah.
We can close the show with the Bray Wyatt take, but I guess I didn't really think it wasn't in my frame of mind that Cody's goal was really to eventually come back home. You know, it seems like it was an easy decision for him to make to come back. He returned at WrestleMania, the one you were at. Is that right, Kelsey? He was Seth Rollins's mystery opponent. If you follow the dirt sheets, you kind of knew he was coming back. But he comes back. He has a great match with Seth Rollins. He gets injured. Kelsey, you're sure you probably have not had a wrestling injury like that, but this was around the time. Now, tell me with the timing of this. He did you kind of join the factory when he was rehabbing from that injury? What was he doing?
Yeah, it was right after, pretty much. The rehab is when I joined. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you've
Yep.
been wrestling for a couple of years, that shot of him taking his robe off in Hell in a Cell, you know, that was that's going to go up as one of the more shocking moments. They did a great job, sort of. At the time, they did a great job on that program. You know, just about the sheer just look of it, and they were quick to explain that, like, yeah, this is his last match. He's done for 9 months. TG, what do you sort of remember about that injury? The optics around it.
Yeah, I remember thinking, and I might have even said this in the group chat during the thing. I remember my thoughts were, there's only two possibilities here. Either this injury is way more painful than he's letting on, or they have done something to it to make it look worse than it is. Because that, and as it turned out, it was the former, not the latter. Because that I knew that, like, if it's a complete tear, and they talked about this in the documentary, and we knew this at the time, it's a complete tear. There's nothing else you can do to it that's gonna hurt it. But the pain is so intense that I was just like, the reason I had that thought was when they're doing spots like Seth, like, grinding the kendo stick, like, into it, I'm like, that is, I mean, so imagine, for example, like, because people can probably not relate to that. Most people can't relate to that injury because obviously few people endure that. But let's say a sprained ankle. Most people, especially people who have ever played sports, have had a sprained ankle at some point. So imagine a sprained ankle is not a severe injury, certainly not as severe as that. Imagine you have a sprained ankle and somebody just takes a stick or whatever and just, like, pushes into the side of your ankle when you have a sprained ankle. How much would that hurt? Incredible amount of pain. That had to be orders of magnitude more severe than that. And he was, like, actively engaged and doing moves and just unbelievable. And I think, one of my other takeaways from this documentary was he barring injury scenarios or, something like that, Cody's going to be the guy to beat Roman. He's going to do it. It's probably going to be WrestleMania 40, almost for sure. And what crossed my mind when I watched that was that match in the doc. I mean, not at the time. Was I knew before that they fully believed in him, but I think that might have been the moment when they were like, okay, we'll see how his rehab goes, but if he comes back and he's 100%, he's the guy. Period. The end, and he's going to be the one who eventually takes the title off Roman. So
yeah, I mean, I was sure for a while they were planning on WrestleMania 39, but then they kind of caught lightning in a bottle with Sami Zayn, and a lot of those plans changed. In our last, I'm going to give the last take here to Kelsey. You trained, at the Nightmare Factory under QT, under Billy Gunn, but all under the auspices of Cody Rhodes. I'm sure you have been in there before when Cody has spoke to the group. I've never even really asked you this, but have you had one-on-one conversations with Cody before?
Yes. So he was there first day. and at least once a week throughout the camp, if not
Okay.
more. His presence on TV was more in demand. He had his Royal Rumble while I was there. A lot of things were happening. So yes, I actually had a promo day, and I got to cut a promo in front of him and another coach. And so to be able to be coached on a promo from Coach Cody himself, which is pretty awesome. I brought his book. It's Fine on Acting. He brought it up in his documentary. Howard Fine, he took his class, and he gave us all this book, and a vision of the craft is on the front of it. So his presence there, you can see that training and development, and he really cares about the students that are there and wants to see them grow, and connecting that from the documentary, learning that was a big part of what Dusty has done in this industry. To see him carry that on, I think Dusty would be pretty damn proud.
I agree. Give us
yeah.
something that you remember from a class or something that Dusty, that Cody impart. Is there something that you remember that sticks with you that you take kind of when you think about your burgeoning wrestling career, when you think about Cody, something that Cody said one time or used as maybe a mantra for you guys that will always stick with you?
What stuck with me was that this is not I would refer to it as a business, just being a business person myself, opening restaurants and being very business. I would refer to it as, this business. And he's like, this isn't the business, like this, is a sport. We're athletes. And that really stood to me and went full circle. And I was like, absolutely. I've always been an athlete. And that kind of is what helped me connect wrestling to myself, is because I've always been that athlete. Yeah, I've always been business as well, but being an athlete, I've never left that. Maybe, the determination and all that kind of fizzles away, but being an athlete and wanting to be in front of people and connect with people, that's just something I've always had in me. And he really, stressed that this is sport entertainment, so athletic ability and performance combined in one. It's not just the business, this is like what we do. And so that passion to come from someone who's the leader of this umbrella, when it comes from any industry who's on the top, that just shows what that company stands for. And as soon as that connection was made, I knew I made the right decision to be coached by one of the best.
It was an awesome documentary. I really appreciate Cody even more now. I agree with Tom. I think he is the guy. I think he's been this guy this whole time. We've sort of been fantasized about Sami Zayn and Jey Uso, and it's all just sort of placeholders to tell the Roman story, but Roman is going to be the part that tells the full Cody story whenever that may be, and I think it's going to be awesome. Final thoughts on just the product right now. I thought Raw was kind of lackluster yesterday. I thought SmackDown was a little bit lackluster. They're sort of in between. I mean, we're after SummerSlam. We got a few months and a couple of pay-per-views before Survivor Series and then Royal Rumble, I guess, in January. So, LA Knights does great. They finally got the title off Austin Theory. Not how we thought it would go.
Yeah.
So, are they trying to do, Santos and Ray, whatever? I think the priority was just get it off Austin Theory because he's not Triple H's. I don't know what they're doing with it, but what Theory's going to do now, who knows? Ray is not going to be I don't know. It's a little bit messy, but when you have the Bloodline storyline, and again, Bloodline storyline is starting to rehash a couple of things. So I think maybe more than in a long time, there's the risk of Bloodline maybe getting stale, but I would never say that I'm off the Bloodline train because it still is the best thing going. Judgment Day has elevated their profile in the world title picture. Seth continues to do great things. TG, am I missing anything big?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they're in sort of a treading water phase because, again, think about big picture. The story that we all think is going to be the main event of WrestleMania 40. They're keeping these guys separated on purpose, so they can't even start to lay the groundwork for that rematch till Royal Rumble, which is okay. But then they also have all these other plates that they're kind of spinning, but not trying to spin them too fast. I disagreed. Like having Ray, like I like Ray, but to go to the trouble to have Santos win that tournament and then just say like, oh, he's hurt now. So Ray, the guy that he beat in a weird way with it, like the injury thing, like he's going to challenge with it. I don't know.
Yeah, Ray got hurt? Were either of those injuries him or Santos's? Were they both works?
I think they're both works. I thought weird decisions. Like it almost felt like there was sort of a change of plan, and maybe, like you said, maybe they want to turn Santos heel now. I would have just had Santos win it and be the U.S. champion. If
you really want to get the title off often in theory, then just do that. Yeah,
right. I think the final thought is to go back to the Bloodline stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they're at a point with the Bloodline storyline where they really are just like, okay, which dance partners haven't matched up yet? Jay and Jimmy haven't feuded yet? Okay, let's have them have a match. And then maybe we'll lay some groundwork for Roman and Solo because they've had some tension. I think we're in sort of a phase where we're really just marking time until they get to the next major pay-per-view, which would be Survivor Series. And, who knows where that goes. I will say, I didn't see, and who knows if they'll even stick with this, but when Jay quit on SmackDown, I didn't see that coming. So maybe they'll do something with that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a way to keep him off television for a few weeks, okay, there are other ways to do that. I didn't see that coming either. I guess we'll get some more answers on Friday. Kelsey, how did your I didn't even talk about this. Did you rip packs on Whatnot last night?
I did. So Whatnot has been awesome. I've been doing a team concept. So basically I have 30 spots. I take the roster, split it up into 30 teams. I rip a box.
When I checked in last week from the beach, I came in a few minutes into your show, and you had a wheel, you had wrestlers. I was totally confused. I'm going to need you to break it down for me, so next Monday I can get in and start buying some packs again. Well, good luck with that, Kelsey. Whatnot Monday, she opens wrestling packs for Graybos. Does a great job with that. TG, you'll find him in and around DC anytime you want to go visit. He'll definitely give you a tour of DC.
Stop by.
Yeah, and we're making our way to Payback in a couple of weeks, but we'll be here every Tuesday. We're here on Thursdays. We're going to talk a lot of AEW this Thursday. We're going to get into the CM Punk tension. CM Punk's pouring gasoline over the field right now. And is going to start tossing lit matches, and I'm here for it. But Tuesdays are WWE. We've covered it. Go watch the Cody Doc if you haven't. I'm tapping out. That's it. All I got. Thank you, guys. Thank you out there. Catch us on YouTube, X, Instagram, Apple, wherever you want to find us. We're here every week on Wrestling Chat with Friends, and we'll see you next Tuesday.